In my book, the first step when it comes to understanding lighting is to understand the 5 most common or the 5 primary key lighting patterns. Now, the key light is simply the primary light over your subject. You can call it a key light, you can call it a main light, whatever you want to call it, it's totally fine. Technically, it's referred to as a key or a main. But what we're going to do is demonstrate and show you basically what these key light patterns are great for. We're going to show you the direction of how the light is coming onto the subject and what the characteristics of them are, because each one of them is great for different purposes. So let's go ahead and start now. For these, we have our lovely real-life model, Olivia here. Olivia is actually our shoot producer, and she's our wardrobe, hair, and makeup artist who works with us. And we have her best friend in this shoot too, Anita. Let me introduce you all to Anita. Anita, my dear. Come on out. Hello. I don't know really how Anita sounds or what her accent should be, but this is Anita. Anita body. Anita body real bad. Okay, so Anita's gonna be our lovely head model, and Anita is Olivia's practice hair and makeup model that she used to use going through school. So thanks to Olivia for providing this creepy little head for us to demonstrate to you all. I really appreciate it. But the great thing about this is that using our little light panel chroma right here, I want to show you all kind of the position of the light in relation to the face. And you're going to see it in the video as well, but it's a little bit easier to see if I can shift it back and forth. You guys can see it almost in kind of 3D and see the space and exact position and placement and so forth. So let's go ahead and start from the top. Number 1, we have flat lighting. Now, flat lighting is basically where the light is directly coming into the face. Now, this could be from a light that's placed behind the camera, or it could be just barely above the lens. So it's going to come directly in the face like this. Generally, when you are flat lighting, you don't want it to come from below the lens. You always want it from above the lens. It's going to look unnatural. Anything coming from below will look unnatural. So this is what it looks like. If I turn this to the side, it's this flat light that goes directly onto the face. What is flat light good for? Well, flat light has very little shadow, okay? So if you look at this, it fills in all the shadows on the face. So the great thing about flat light is it's very non-dramatic, okay? It's gonna create a very flattering look because it's gonna fill in all the lines and all the wrinkles and all the imperfections, and it's gonna really create a beautiful overall look. So we're gonna use it for headshots, which will demonstrate like a nice little square light setup that will give you a beautiful flat light. And we're also gonna use it, well, when we do our direct flash editorial shots and so forth. It creates a really fantastic look to the images. And don't think that just because the light has no direction, it's not a good light. It is, it's great for these types of shots. The next one, we're just gonna move and adjust the lights in a very subtle way. And what we're gonna do is get to butterfly lighting, which is number 2, butterfly or Paramount. Now it's called Paramount because the actual studio Paramount used this type of lighting technique to light every single one of their celebrity headshots for a long, long time back in the old days of Hollywood. So it became known as Paramount lighting. But this is basically butterfly light, and it's characterized by this little butterfly that you have right underneath the nose. It kind of creates the wings and the pattern of a butterfly underneath the nose with the shadow. So that light, we move from flat light simply up a little bit and we angle it down, okay? So from right here, and it's straight over the face, and I'm gonna turn this to the side a little bit so you guys can see it. This is our butterfly light, and you can see that butterfly shadow just right underneath the nose. Okay, so this is again without diffusion, but it's gonna look a little bit different with diffusion. Now, butterfly light is fantastic because similar to flat lighting, it's gonna come directly onto the face, which means that it fills in wrinkles and it fills in everything. And if you use a reflector underneath, which creates clamshell lighting, you get a beautiful fill. And it looks fantastic. It's a very flattering beauty type light that's often used for beauty, it's often used for portraits and so forth. It's again, another great kind of similar to flat light, but it does create a little more shadow than flat lighting. Okay, so moving from butterfly, we get to loop. Now loop is basically where we take the light and it's again above the subject's head a little bit, but we move it off camera or just off angle a little bit by around 25 to say 50 degrees. So if this was where our Paramount light was, loop is gonna be right about here, where around 25 to 50 degrees, we're starting to create just a little bit of a shadow that comes off the nose, and you can see that. It's just a little bit of an edge there. So it's a great light because it creates a slightly more dramatic look as it creates a little more shadow on the face. With flat light and with butterfly light, it's very much kind of shadowless, especially when we're using a lot of fill and so forth. There's really not a lot of shadow, which makes it very flattering, but it's not a very dramatic style of light. Once we get into loop, it has a little bit more drama to it. It still is covering most of the face in light, but with the direction of light, we get a little bit more shadow on one side. And if a subject has a good versus a, well, I want to say a more flattering side, we might want to choose loupe or even Rembrandt lighting to kind of light into the side that they might prefer. So it's to get a slightly more flattering look overall. Okay, so from that, now we have loupe, which is 25 degrees, say this is paramount. Here we got loupe, and don't mind me kind of changing the direction of this, it's just for ease purposes. So if we were to look off to the side, here is loupe right here. So that's where it looks like in position to the head. Okay, let me make sure that that's the right shadow. And then we go into Rembrandt. Now Rembrandt is basically when we pull this off even more directionally, and what we end up getting is we get this little, we get a lot of the light on one side of the face, and we get a split highlight just right over the eye and under the cheek of the eye. Okay, on the other side of the face, but most of the face is in shadow. So if I turn this to the side, again, this is kind of what it looks like from the side. It's going to come up high, and we get that little split right there, leaving half the, really a good part of the face in shadow, with the exception of the eye and that cheek. Okay, again, Rembrandt lighting, you're getting more and more dramatic. As we add and introduce more shadow into our portrait, we're going to get a more dramatic look, which for this type of a shot isn't necessarily the most flattering thing, but still we can diffuse it because this is still a direct light. It's not diffused, so we have pretty sharp shadow edges. When we diffuse it, it'll look a little more flattering. But typically it's not used for beauty. It's used for drama. It's used when you want to show, more shadows and more edge to an image. All right, so I wouldn't use it when you want to like create a very flattering portrait. Your subject might be a little angry with you that they kind of look, they'll be like, why does it look so serious? And they won't know why, even if they're smiling. Okay, lastly, we have split. So Rembrandt was more angled than loupe. So here we had loupe. Okay, so loupe was about right here. Rembrandt was over here. And then split is basically right off to the side, where we're basically splitting the light. So it's coming directly from the side where you get the split right down the nose. Okay, so leaving half the face in shadow and half the face lit up. So if you were to light it from, let's see, how would I do this? If I were to switch hands, the light is essentially just directly behind. Well, it's not to behind, but to the side of their face. So from here to here. Now again, if Rembrandt is to be kind of directional and to create more drama, then your split lighting is going to create even more drama. Okay, it's going to leave half the face in shade, but it's heavily directional. So it makes it really fantastic for, say, athletic portraits and so forth. We use a lot of Rembrandt and split lighting when we do our athlete portrait because we want that heavily directional light. Not only is it dramatic, it also draws a lot of definition across their muscle features and so forth. So these two, I'd say, are kind of more on the dramatic side. And basically what we have here in this lighting setup, if you notice, as we go to this side, we end up with less shadows. Less shadows means less drama. And as we go to this side, we end up with more shadows. And more shadows means more drama. So those are our 5 common key light patterns, or the 5 primary key light patterns. Let's go on to the next video, and we're going to show you what these key light patterns look like with diffusion, because the change, it's actually quite significant between these with direct light without diffusion and with diffusion and fill.